You're telling me a bisexual narwhal made these beats? Damn. That is one talented, horny whale. If, like me, you spend a lot of your time working by writing and conducting research or making art or any other such thing, you've likely gone a-Googling for background noise that isn't too distracting. Sometimes wordy music gets too much. If you already know it, you might get caught up in wanting to sing along. If you don't know it, well, maybe it's a good-ass song or has a good narrative and you need to pay attention to it. When I first ran into this sort of thing in high school and then in college, I would click on instrumental music, especially the best epic game stuff like Two Steps from Hell. There was at least 1 year where they were my top artists on my Spotify Wrapped. Nowadays, we have the lo-fi study chill girl channel thingy, and we have something called Binaural Beats. The sea of YouTube binaural beat content is quite deep. I mean, it has to be in order to hold all those magnificent narwhals making it bisexually. If they were making it heterosexually, you'd probably only need a puddle. A lot of these videos have big promises. The entire idea of binaural beats is filled with big promises. Are any of them true, though? 1. The science. In 1841, I know, video essay, Heinrich Wilhelm Dove discovered 2 things. First, binaural beats. Second, bisexual narwhals enjoy impaling German birds who try to steal their beats. Obviously, that's a joke. Heinrich was not a bird because birds are not real. BBs, binaural beats, and the all-important BBLs, binaural beat listenings, weren't put to a scientific paper until 1973, a full 132 years later. Remember that. Cool, thanks for the history lesson, me, but what is a BB and a BBL? Well, I am BB, obviously. Shower me in affection, please. And a BBL is a big Bible lesson about how important big butt lifts are to our Lord and Savior. A binaural beat is the pulsating perception created when one tone or note is played in the left ear and another at a different frequency is played in the right. When these two combine, you hear a third distinct tone. The frequency, the resulting pitch, is the difference in the frequencies of the 2 notes. Say there's a tone of 100 Hz in your left ear and another at 104 in your right. The resulting binaural beat would occur at 4 Hz. That's quite low. For reference, the lowest you get on a piano, like a full 88-key piano, is an A0 at 27.5 Hz. Your brain, it claims, syncs up with this frequency. This is called entrainment. Not to be confused with entertainment, which is a fun time, or entertrainment, which is when you enter a train. The changing brain waves can have an effect on your mood. There are 5 relevant wave types here that correspond to 5 types of binaural beats, at least according to some people. Delta waves occur at 1 to 4 Hz. If your delts hurts more than 4, you should probably stop exercising them. Haha, I'm so funny. Supposedly, delta waves are for sleep, pain, stress relief, and meditation. Next, we have theta waves at 4 to 8 Hz. Theta waves, whose BBL is apparently meant for relaxing and creativity. Then there's alpha waves from 8 to 14 Hz, which is about the size in inches of alpha equipment and fan fiction. Being with your alpha can induce in a good omega positivity, stress relief, relaxation, focus, and an ease at learning. Isn't it so nice to be with an alpha? Beta waves, like beta-gendered people in the Omegaverse, are more common, occurring between 14 and 30 Hz. Supposedly, you get increased focus, problem-solving abilities, and energy. Finally, we come to gamma waves. That's 30 to 100 Hz. They're meant to increase cognitive ability, attention to detail, focus, and creativity. Psychology today associates the actual brain waves in the following ways. Delta to deep sleep, theta to light sleep, alpha to meditation, and beta to alert awakeness. They don't care about gamma waves, I guess. Now, do binaural beats do any of that? It seems that binaural beats do have an effect on anxiety and pain intensity. The articles I read all stress that research here has been limited and often contradictory, though. If there is an actual benefit, it is mostly around those 2 things, anxiety and pain relief. At least as of 2022, according to this article from The Conversation, a true effect on concentration has not been noted. I think it might be reasonable to assume, though, that for some people, a reduction in pain, anxiety, or cortisol levels could correlate with an increase in concentrative ability. If you're not panicking, it's probably easier to sit down and work on stuff. Who would have guessed? An article in Medical News Today, while suggesting that binaural beats might help with anxiety, says, "It is important to avoid using binaural beats therapy while undertaking tasks that require alertness and full attention, such as driving." So, if binaural beats are meant to increase the capability for focus, why would it be inadvisable to listen whilst driving? Do they narrow the range of focus too much to engage in complex activity? Or is it more likely that, while potentially soothing for some people, the claims surrounding binaural beats are mostly bullshit? A study published in 2023 showed binaural beats might actually hinder cognitive function, perhaps because they interfere with natural brainwaves or perhaps because they inspire drowsiness. The latter conclusion falls in line with thoughts about its limiting factor on anxiety. A relaxed, drowsy state is less conducive to anxiety, but it's also less conducive to high-level brain usage. When Steve Etheridge tried to see if the promises of higher concentration would help him with his writing, he found he did check his email less often, but he also did everything else less often. He called the experience sedative. Again, binaural beats seem to have a calming effect that sometimes aids or inspires sleep or sleepiness. The vast claims of all of its peddlers seem mostly unsubstantiated by science. They are vast, broad claims, and I feel comfortable saying the majority of them are without merit. The BB producers and listeners might believe they function as promised, but belief doesn't always equate reality. There is another claim about the effects of binaural beats, though, and that is that they can take you to 2 new heights. Some people say that binaural beats and other auditory machinations can evoke a high similar to drug usage. Can BBs give you the same euphoria as substance use? People claim it does. There are YouTube videos saying they'll get you high and comments talking about how it totally worked. Well, no, they don't. Or at least the science doesn't currently back that up. People who already use drugs are more likely to listen to binaural beats in combination with their usage. For instance, people who smoke weed to help with their sleep might add delta wave binaural beats to their nighttime routine in order to further help their sleep. However, there isn't really evidence that it acts as, say, a hallucinogen or an upper. Josie Adams assumed that this was nonsense and so set off on a journey of listening to binaural beats that advertised or promised a drug-esque high. She writes off this digital drug odyssey of hers with, "While I never got high, the hours of listening to low and throbbing frequencies were fantastic for productivity. I don't know if it was because my mind was desperate to throw itself at anything else, or if I tapped into some kind of gamma wave megamind mode." YouTube channel HQ Binaural Beats has a video claiming to simulate the medication Vyvanse, a stimulant used to treat ADHD and binge eating. Here, this is from the video description. "This binaural beat was created to replicate the prescription drug lisdexamfetamine, Vyvanse. Vyvanse can be used to assist individuals with ADHD. The video claims it's to mimic the effect on concentration, but if you recall back, concentration and focus are the supposed benefits most in question in the literature. So here we have a YouTube channel claiming their sound waves are a replication of a prescription drug used to treat actual conditions and which can be abused as an upper. Does that not strike anyone else as dangerous? At the very least, it's insanely irresponsible, and I encourage this user, who doesn't seem to be uploading anymore, to take down the video. At no point, by the way, do they tell you what frequency they are using for their beat or even what wave type they are aiming for. They similarly don't tell you the wave type or frequency of their million-viewed video claiming to replicate the experience of smoking marijuana. In the description to this video, they do at least go out of their way to say that while this is meant to replicate the effects of getting high off weed, it's obviously not the same as actually smoking, which, like, yeah, duh. A video by YouTube channel Binaural Beats Pro claims to be a digital drug. There is, again, no mention of the brainwave they're aiming to conjure or any indication of the frequency of the beat they are using. There is no explanation of the type of high they are wanting to induce, including whether or not it's meant to be hallucinogenic in nature. But hey, at least there's a random Facebook link in the description that I refuse to click on so that you can donate to them for the grand experience of getting high to their unexplained, seemingly removed from reality claim of drug replication. Similarly, Pure Beat Entertainment's attempt to replicate the effects of psychedelics has no mention of frequency or wave type. A more recent video, which does mention these things, albeit in an incomplete way, is Celestial Subliminal's video claiming to invoke shrooms. Celestial says they're using theta waves, so a difference of 4 to 8 hertz at 432 hertz. Now, is that the exact middle of the two tones causing the binaural beat, or is one of the two meant to be at 432 and the other between 4 to 8 hertz lower or higher? Or is this someone who doesn't know what binaural beats are, simply playing a tone set at 432 in both ears? Love Motive's meditation music has a video with over 2 million views, claiming to affect the same high as using DMT. The channel Vibes World has videos claiming to emulate heroin and LSD. NeoWake also claims to have found an LSD frequency with binaural beats. So here's the question. Do these channels actually believe in this? Are they true believers in New Age pseudoscience tenuously connected to actual phenomena, or are they merely grifters? To be honest, most of this "all sounds will totally get you high" stuff sounds like it's theoretically harmless, primarily because no, it won't. It's like that episode of Bob's Burgers where Tina's friends drink margarita mix, think it's alcoholic, and then start acting drunk despite not having a drop of actual alcohol in their systems. There is something sinister, in my opinion, about the Vyvanse video specifically, though. Elsewise. 3. YouTube and monetization. A guy who styles himself as the binaural beat freak claims that the very nature of YouTube as a platform incentivizes big claims that don't have to be substantiated. While plenty of videos in the last section did mention a specific frequency they were aiming for with their beats, Beat Freak points out that even if they do that, there's nothing stopping them from simply lying about it. According to him, YouTube also does some compression things that might mess with the binaural beat itself by the time it hits your ears. A few things. First, yeah, that's an accurate statement about YouTube. The platform's not a peer-reviewed journal. People just be saying shit. I be saying shit. Second, is BBF a neutral or reliable reporter here? He has an article on his website talking about porn addiction. Now, this kind of gives away that he's not really interested in the science either. Porn addiction doesn't exist. It's not real. The vast majority of behavioral addictions are suspect at best. I like to eat at very specific times. It is a pattern I've developed over the years, and it's how I make sure that I eat. I dislike not being able to eat at those approximate times, and I will do so even if I am not hungry, because that's food time. Is that because I'm addicted to meal times, or am I, like most humans, a creature of habit? Regardless, in his article, he suggests if you have a porn addiction, counseling won't help. Instead, you should buy this hypnosis course or do some subliminal messaging. Hypnosis is a legitimate psychological practice. As part of a therapy program, it is not a substitute for therapy. And if it were a real addiction, counseling would help. In my opinion, BBF is, just like the people he's critiquing, a vaguely anti-science, new age, neoconservative grifter. But are binaural beats even that lucrative on YouTube anymore? In recent years, YouTube has been cracking down on what it considers low-effort, repetitive content. If you look at the subreddits for r/newtubers and r/partnered YouTube, you'll see people saying you probably won't be able to monetize these sorts of channels nowadays. The more you use someone else's content, even if it's in the public domain, or if you've bought the rights, the less likely your channel is to be accepted into the partner program. Binaural beats and similar types of content are suggested as a potential easy way to earn money. There are lots of these financial freedom types of pushes for these kinds of things. Here's a video directing people to use AI to earn thousands of dollars, they claim, via uploading low-effort, semi-repetitive music content. Most of these binaural beat videos are dark screens or static images or looping animations. Technically, that's all low effort. If you loop the sound too, well... Still, plenty of these channels make, or claim to make, their own noises. Maybe they make the images or animations or buy the rights for them as well. Still, it can be hard to monetize these things nowadays. Does that mean BBF's concern about YouTube's incentives no longer apply? Well, no, not at all. Lots of binaural beat producers publish their beats on, say, Spotify. They sell MP3s and merchandise. Increasing your YouTube audience increases the likelihood of people clicking on any of the links in your profile or following you on social media. You get more listeners and purchases. Clickbait titles lead to more engagement. Lofty promises draw in plenty of people. This is cross-platform self-promotion, where creators can still make money even if rejected from the YouTube Partner Program. Perhaps you engage in one art form or platform to promote your other artistic endeavors. For instance, I make video essays here on this channel, and in them I tend to plug my writing with the idea that maybe someone will be interested in giving them a read. Maybe you make a bunch of relatively being an operative word here, low effort, high engagement binaural beat slop and feed, say, 1% of your audience into engaging with your other work. If your binaural beat channel has, say, 15,000 subscribers, that would be 150 to your other endeavors. That may not be an insane amount, but that is an increase that can further drive other traffic. Let's look at some specific examples. Recall NeoWake, briefly mentioned in the last section with their supposed LSD trip. NeoWake is also an app. On their website, one of the benefits they claim their frequencies and sounds offer is immunity, paired with a picture of what appear to be blood platelets. They are advertising that their noises can offer biological immunity. That is pure nonsense. It is a lie. They are wanting to make money selling something they cannot give you. A sound is not going to give you immunity to a disease. There's NeoWake Sound, which is the channel that gave us our LSD trip, and NeoWake Bio, which gives us a video claiming to boost the immunity system. Again, something their video does not and cannot do. They include at the very bottom of their description here the following. We hereby emphasize that we cannot promise any healing effects with our application of our frequencies and treatments, nor do we wish to do so. The mentioned frequencies are all based on experiences that have been made in practical application by Dr. Reif, who, or are based on the experience of the patient, who. However, these cannot be applied to individual cases. There is a lack of conventional medical evidence of efficacy. We are not liable for risks or issues associated with using our bioresonance frequencies. Great. They recognize they're full of bullshit, and they put that there, in my opinion, to cover their own ass. Let me ask you, though. How often are you clicking on the descriptions of YouTube videos? And then, how often are you scrolling to the very end of those descriptions? When it's buried like this, beneath all the claims of providing benefit, it seems like they do not want people to realize they can't actually provide you biological medical help via noises from YouTube.com. If they're not both channels of the same company, then someone needs to shut the second one down. If they are, the second one still ought to be shut down, in my personal opinion. Maybe YouTube should get on that. That second channel has another video claiming to be able to heal your eyesight with their sound waves. Pure, utter bullshit. It has a lot of insane, unscientific claims, at least in their titles. And I'm sure they get away with it due to their buried medical disclaimer. Personally, I think YouTube has a responsibility to shut that shit down or forcibly place disclaimers from YouTube itself on each of the videos, clarifying that their clickbait title claims are pseudoscientific nonsense and will not provide you any medical help. Both channels have videos saying their noises will activate your metabolism and help you burn fat. That's why, guys, you just gotta listen to some noises. Surely they have even more powerful ones on their app. Just give them money for their sounds and everything will be okay. Did you know there's a frequency developed by the US military in 1918 to create super soldiers? And if you listen to it on YouTube.com, you too might be super soldiered. No, you didn't know that because that's not true. But if you're very easily persuadable and into the whole "all noises can change you" thing, you might think that's true, especially if you're one of the over 2 million people who have listened to the channel Meditational State Healing Music and their video claiming that 174 Hz is the magical frequency. They say in the description, "This frequency was originally developed by the US military in 1918 to help create super soldiers, giving them complete focus on any given task." That did not happen. It's fiction. Their channel has over 700,000 subscribers. This unscientific channel promising healing it has no business promising is currently monetized. You can become a member of their channel. Or maybe you'll join them over on Patreon. Maybe you'll buy their music. Maybe you'll make an account on their website where I found no mention of how this is not a medically accepted or approved therapy. Despite what they claim, a binaural beat at the magical frequency of 528 hertz will not heal your DNA. They have a video titled in part, "Scientists Can't Understand How This Audio Heals the Brain." And that's accurate. Scientists can't understand it because it doesn't do that. It is a claim that is incorrect. In other words, it's a lie that, in my opinion, is designed to take advantage of people desperate for healing and hope and instead funnel them into a way to make money. I find that pretty goddamn disgusting. You might say, oh, but there's an article in Forbes talking about the magic 528 frequency and how it can heal people. I wonder why Michael Plitkins, chief technology officer of the company Spatial, which sells, among other things, auditory landscapes and sounds, might publish something pushing pseudoscientific nonsense. Maybe he's a true believer. People believe a lot of things. They especially believe them when pushed by someone who seems to be a likable expert, someone popular, someone who hosts one of the most popular podcasts on the planet. 4. Dr. Andrew Huberman. Andrew Huberman is an associate professor at Stanford and host of the wildly popular Huberman Lab podcast, where he talks about science in a non-condescending way to his millions of listeners. In a clip from his podcast uploaded to YouTube October 2022, Huberman says, 40 Hz binaural beats have been shown in a number of peer-reviewed studies to increase focus and concentration. He then suggests a specific app to use. He continually says this is supported by the science. Except, is it? Really? Because it seems like the science suggests it might have an effect on anxiety. It seems like the science suggests its sedative quality might lower cognitive ability. Huberman is making strong claims that it does not seem are actually backed up by the whole of the literature. And the studies that have been done, it seems, have been rather small and mostly inconclusive, in part due to the smallness of the samples. The science is not there yet to make these sorts of definitive claims. Huberman is a smart guy, so why is he speaking in this way? Huberman says he has no connection to the app Brainwave's 37 binaural series. He recommends, after saying you can access binaural beats for free, which is true, you can, they're all over YouTube for instance, but the app itself costs $5.99. Maybe it was free at the time of recording, right? A post on his subreddit asking about the app, because there are a bunch with the same sorts of names, ends up showing that it costs $5.99 back then too. Now, it's not a sin to be wrong about the cost of something on a podcast or to not really tell people that it's not free, especially if you get no financial backing from it, but it is odd. It's a bit odder when combined with how much he's overselling the science. It comes across like he has an incentive to push this on his listeners. Maybe he didn't, but that's how it came across to me. Sure, I watched after doing a bunch of research, so I'm primed to be skeptical. His normal listeners, they're primed to trust him. I find this a bit concerning. There's another clip in which he claims it increases reaction time. Now that doesn't vibe with the suggestion you should not listen to them whilst driving. Is Huberman wrong? Is the data inconclusive? Or is Medical News Today wrong? Huberman pushes 40 Hz frequencies, this time without mentioning binaural beats, in a video he did for the wellness app Virtuesin. He uses relatively the same language here. So here's a question. Is it 40 Hz, Dr. Huberman? Or is it binaural beats at 40 Hz? Do the beats not matter? Why then did you talk about them specifically as beneficial instead of simply the 40 Hz frequency? If they do matter, and it isn't just the frequency, why aren't they mentioned in this video for this paid app? Dr. Huberman, how much do they pay you for this appearance and your other appearances? Do you have a financial stake in this company? Virtuesin sells dun-dun-dun supplements, the thing that every hack hawks. A type of product Huberman himself tells his listeners to buy despite their relative lack of oversight by the FDA. Virtuesin's app has a premium for $12.59 a month. You might be wondering why I'm going in so hard on someone who has not necessarily made the same sweeping, harmful claims as the YouTube channels mentioned in the previous section. Honestly, at first, I expected Dr. Huberman to merely go over what binaural beats are, their supposed benefits, and then maybe mention how the literature has not come to strong conclusions and it needs more studies. Then he was a bit confident in his claims and didn't particularly convey how murky the waters in this field are. And then I Googled him. This is sort of an H-bomber guy type system shock where I set out to make this video about one thing and then it started to spiral. This is about binaural beats, but it's also about more than that. Of Huberman, Dr. Andrea Love writes, Huberman fills his podcast with confident displays of pseudoscience, topped with the appeal to authority he garners by regularly repeating his academic credentials to gain your trust. He cherry-picks weak or irrelevant studies while discarding larger and more robust studies that demonstrate something different. That's in line with how he talks about binaural beats and the power of 40 Hz frequencies. So, unfortunately, I had to read more and watch more. This included what seems, in my opinion, to be a very irresponsible clip from April 2025 with Dr. Chris Palmer. Doctors Palmer and Huberman talk about vaccines and autism. Dr. Palmer claims that vaccinations cause inflammation that, in certain rare cases, can lead or contribute to the development of autism. He says, too, that the diseases themselves can cause this, so theoretically he's pro-vaccine because it's better to only risk autism instead of risking both autism and dying from a preventable disease. Later in the clip, Dr. Huberman says, I think there's soon to be an exploration, a scientific exploration between vaccines and autism. Dr. Palmer would go on to say that he's been told by many colleagues that they have looked into this and found no connection, but he isn't sure they looked hard enough. Hi, doctors. Do vaccines cause autism? No. You know this. Why do we all know this? Because this has been studied extensively. Just because a bunch of people have bought into conspiracy theories, because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a quack anti-science bigoted moron who seems to view autism as the worst thing that could happen to a child, does not mean all of the previous science is invalid. It doesn't mean it wasn't rigorous. It means your suggestions and innuendos are dangerous. This is gross, and it's surrounded by lies and partial truths meant to make their audience buy into a conspiracy theory. Maybe they're true believers. Vaccines don't cause autism. That was an irresponsible use of your platform, Dr. Huberman, and I'm fairly certain that you know that. Another thing RFK and Huberman seem to at least walk in a similar direction on is fluoride and the fluoridization of water. RFK is more hyperbolic and unconnected to reality in his fear-mongering about fluoride in tap water than Huberman is, but in a clip Huberman posted discussing fluoride, he does imply that perhaps it's dangerous. Perhaps it's reasonable to distrust, to want it gone. He filters it out of most of his water, after all. He points out that high-level doses of fluoride might interfere with the thyroid. Now, that is seemingly true, but he correctly points out the CDC's recommended level, 0.7 parts per million. So at what rate does it become potentially problematic for the thyroid? Well, according to some studies, there isn't really a connection. One study I read said, all study results showed a non-significant association between thyroid function and fluoride up to 1.4 parts per million. If you're worried about your thyroid performance, though, the solution is not to start filtering your water. It's to go get your hormones checked by an endocrinologist. If your levels are fine, cool. You freaked out for no reason. Maybe calm down and hold a bit more skepticism towards the health scares people try to sell you on so you go out and buy products. If there's something wrong, then now you know, and you and your doctor can determine what's going on and what, if any, changes you specifically should be making. He repeatedly states that fluoride is a poison at high doses. This is true. According to Derek Bears, the amount of fluoridated water with the average US parts per million you would have to drink in a day is over 150 gallons. I don't know about you, but I'm not drinking that much of anything, period. Huberman tells a story of when he was a child and received fluoride poisoning by being a dumbass little kid who swallowed a fluoride solution. He asserts that if you're drinking a lot of water with even low levels of fluoride, there's potential for harm. This potential has been a focus of wellness influencer types for a long time, like those who want vaccinations to be bad or who want Ozempic to harm those who are taking it. In an interview with Johns Hopkins, Dr. Charlotte Lewis said, trying to connect fluoride in the water to health risks has been going on for decades. Those potential connections, for example hip fractures or bone cancer, have all been disproven through robust research. In that video on fluoride, he talks about and shows off a tea that he likes to drink which doesn't use fluoridated water. Fun fact, you're going to be totally shocked about this. He is the majority shareholder in that business, or at least he was at the time he recorded that clip. He has an anti-mouthwash clip with a dentist named Dr. Stacy Whitman, who, on her Instagram, vastly oversells the anti-fluoride movement. I wonder why. It's actually a lot of her Instagram content. She has an Instagram post that says, "Lack of evidence is not evidence," and then goes on and on about how it's bad science when science tells people that their anecdotal experience is not science, which, it's not. That's not science. She's a functional dentist, if you go by Linktree, or a holistic dentist according to her website, or both. They're interchangeable, apparently. What do those two things mean? I mean, she directs you to buy a lot of products. Here's what her website says about functional dentistry. Functional dentistry focuses on the entire person, whole body, when treating dental problems, as all areas of health are connected: the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. Spiritual. That's not science. That's religion. It's the place of crunchy granola people. And a dentist stepping into other medical situations? Emotional health? Well, I guess it makes sense that she's on Huberman's podcast. They have widely overstepping their boundaries in common with each other. Hypnosis, aromatherapy, things entirely unrelated to the field of dentistry. So she's on his podcast saying it's bad to use mouthwash on the daily. Well, Dr. Shunlong Chan of Ohio State University says that the microbial bacteria Dr. Whitman is so concerned about, mouthwash can change the proportion, but there's not much evidence to show this is cause for concern. Whitman talks about how these bacteria are important for cardiovascular health. Dr. Chan says of these studies around this, that's indirect evidence that somehow oral bacteria may migrate, but it's not strong evidence. Seems like Dr. Stacy Whitman is overselling her hand, as Huberman himself often does, and with no pushback from him. She seems to believe in some sorts of pseudoscience. In this clip, he defends pseudoscience and how it sometimes becomes regular science. That feels like he's running defense for the unscientific things he and his guests, like Dr. Whitman, push on his podcast, just as he did when discussing binaural beats. Dr. Michelle Wong once tweeted out a clip of Huberman hoping someone could help her find the study he was discussing. In the clip, he talks about how people used to fearmonger about sunscreen to him and he would roll his eyes about it. But then it turned out they found sunscreen molecules in someone's brain 10 years after they stopped using sunscreen, so not that he has to worry because he doesn't use sunscreen in the first place. Dr. Wong found no such study. She wondered if it was even possible to study. How could you control to make sure that the only exposure was from sunscreen a decade before looking in the brain? As far as I know, as of time of recording, Huberman has never provided this study. As a guy who's trying to show how to live a good life, one might take this as him endorsing not using sunscreen and suggesting that its use might be bad. Of course, there can be problems with certain sunscreens and sunscreen regulation. Yet its usage is very important in staving off skin cancer. This is the same as his fluoride stuff. It can be bad, maybe sometimes. I'm not paranoid about it. Anyway, I make sure to cut it out of my life, and I'm a Stanford professor. With his amazing credentials, Huberman tries his best to help his listeners improve their lives. Improve them according to what standard, though? Because it's not a purely scientific one. Maybe it's in part a conservative ascetic one. Asceticism is a philosophical ideal I critique a lot. To overgeneralize it, it's the belief that self-denial is good and pleasure or pleasure-seeking is immoral. Only Huberman makes sure to douse his Ret Vern-type rhetoric in the language of science. In 2025, he posted a clip discussing addictions. Okay, cool, fine topic to cover. In this clip, he talks about addiction to video games, social media, and porn. These are known as behavioral addictions. The way Dr. Huberman talks about them, you would be forgiven for assuming this framing is widely accepted in the scientific community. In an episode with Jordan Peterson, he frames pornography addiction as people are resisting the urge to look at porn, but then looking at it anyway, as if that's what an addiction is. It's incredibly close to how Girl defines pornography addiction, where to them it's really any urge to look at it, especially if it results in any level of consumption. That's like saying having a glass of wine on occasion is addiction. Huberman doesn't add the nuance of how a sex-negative culture can lead to masochistic pleasure shame-seeking, where some of the pleasure is found in the resulting shame. As has been the case in some of these other instances, he is overselling his position. Amanda McMillan writes for Time magazine, "Sex addiction is not recognized in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual DSM-5, the reference guide for mental illnesses published by the American Psychiatric Association, APA. One reason for that is a lack of evidence that sexual behavior changes the brain the same way other addictive substances like drugs and alcohol do." Well, okay. Huberman lays out a theory about dopamine and dopamine-chasing activities, which seems to imply that you can be addicted to anything if you like it and indulge in it frequently. That's where the implied asceticism comes in. Be careful doing things you like, you might get addicted. Maybe you should engage in ascetic self-denial. Pleasure is bad. Now, this isn't to say everyone thinks behavioral addictions aren't real. There are therapists and others who do frame these things as addiction, even though, addiction technically requires the substance part and the ability to experience physical withdrawal symptoms. But, okay, we're broadening a definition which might be accidentally demonizing regular human behavior. It's just a linguistic thing that happens, maybe. But Sanjana Gupta writes in Business Insider, "It's also the fact of the matter that, much like the rest of sexuality, enjoying erotic content is often done in secret and without context. In fact, most of the US has no purposefully incorrect sexuality education, especially for young adults. This creates an environment for folks to misunderstand the erotic entertainment they are enjoying. Therefore, what people refer to as porn addiction is essentially a conflict of values that's leading you to say you're addicted," says Nicole Prowse, PhD, a neuroscientist who researches sexual psychophysiology. In a podcast episode with Dr. Kyle Gillett, both Huberman and his guests make it seem like there's a scientific consensus that masturbation lowers libido. This is not true. The science does not agree with them. After calling that idea a myth, Healthline states, "Many people find that masturbating alone or with their partner can actually enhance their sex life." The Cleveland Clinic also agrees that the idea of lowered libido and therefore lower desire to find a partner is a myth. Great job, Dr. Huberman. I wonder why he's pushing these socially conservative coded myths about sex and pleasure. In fact, before pushing this myth, Huberman mentions there's debate on the internet about whether or not masturbating decreases testosterone in men, and he leaves that there. Now, he is technically right. This is debated by people on the internet. You know who it isn't debated by? Scientists. From Healthline again. "While ejaculation from masturbation may have a short-term effect on your testosterone levels, it doesn't cause any long-term effects." They go on to point out that what can cause strong fluctuations in T levels is depression and anxiety, two things which can be caused by guilt over self-pleasure. In other words, obsessing over this very thing Huberman is pushing, this ascetic nonsense in disguise as scientific fact, masturbating will potentially lower your T levels and cause problems while searching for relationships, Huberman implies through his statements. That can lead to lower T levels. Feel shame for it. Feel such shame you need a guiding father to show you how to wander out of the darkness. Just listen, give him your time, and buy his goddamn supplements. Okay, so maybe porn addiction isn't quite real. Maybe quite a bit of it is conservative anti-sex attitudes mixing with feelings of shame and the fundamental hole at the center of every human. But we all know gaming addiction is real, right? Like, all these young boys who are likely to listen to Huberman are stuck on these gaming consoles, and it's ruining their lives in a way that's fundamentally different from usual expressions of adolescence. Surely. I talked about this briefly in my video on Genshin Impact, so forgive me for plagiarizing myself, but, what good is a video essay if it doesn't involve a little self-love googling, Video game addiction isn't currently included in the DSM. Mark Zastrow examined the beliefs around supposed video game addiction for proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. There are some who believe it exists, and others who believe the supposed disease is likely a symptom of other underlying mental health issues. The most commonly suggested mental health issue I saw in the article was a lack of impulse control. Some who think it does exist believe it exists at vastly smaller numbers than people assume. This seems like an attempt to pathologize normal human behavior. There seems to be a puritanical attempt to paint any pleasurable activity oft undertaken as wrong. And what concerns me about that is that often this science is used to transform medicalization into governmental restriction. China has decided, despite the lack of evidence, that video game addiction is not only real, but widespread and devastating amongst the youths. Right before they published draconian reactionary restrictions on the gaming industry, a state-owned newspaper compared gaming to drug abuse. The actual lack of evidence for so-called behavior addictions functioning the same as substance abuse is a large part of why it currently isn't accepted in the DSM. But as a pretense to crack down on the industry and restrict the lives of its citizens, China has decided to pretend the evidence solidly backs this comparison. Of course, you have to make this comparison if you want to introduce heavy restrictions, because otherwise you'd have to decide whether or not it's an addiction based on the individual extreme cases where that might be a reality instead of treating it as a substance. In this paper, they talk about a supposedly addicted teen whose grades started to suffer. Gaming offered him a sense of achievement. His father smashed countless phones. In protest, the kid tried to kill himself. The implication is that this is the fault of the gaming, but no. The achievement comment implies an existing mental health condition, likely a sort of existential depression. The father's abusive reaction is more concerning than anything about gaming. That was not good parenting. Of course, China's entire reaction to gaming, as described in this article, isn't good parenting. In extreme cases, teens are administered electroshock therapy to reduce their addiction to gaming. So, medical torture. I'm not saying Huberman is in favor of those restrictions. I am saying when Huberman goes along the lines of gaming addiction is a totally real thing scientists all agree on, and here's a story about a kid who did a 30-day cleanse and whoa, he totally didn't have ADHD after all. Isn't it good he detoxed before going on ADHD meds? It fires off some warning flares for me, not simply about overselling a scientific consensus that doesn't exist. The story, like the fluoride story, is an anecdote seemingly meant to further sell you on his idea that these things are bad, that the science completely agrees with him, and that you should pursue the same for you and yours. Another thing that makes you go, when listening to Huberman is the amount of supplements he's sponsored by and attempts to get his listeners to buy, assumedly getting a cut of the sales through an affiliate link or discount code or other such thing. One of his most consistent sponsors, for whom he is a scientific advisor, is Athletic Greens, which sells AG1, a quite expensive supplement powder. When investigating the powder, Healthline says there's a lack of scientific research to confirm safety or effectiveness. That's not entirely shocking for Huberman, but it is a bit concerning for a podcast supposedly about scientific education. Dr. Love says of this partnership, steering your listeners into the wide and unregulated world of supplements is bad. At best, most supplements do nothing. At worst, they can be harmful. Hank Green once said the supplement industry is the Theranos of industry, which basically means a high promise, no results scam. Of interest here is that the founder of the company and its former head started Athletic Greens after, according to reporting by Scott Carney, he fled New Zealand because he broke a bunch of New Zealand laws with a real estate scam. I don't know about you, but I don't particularly trust an alleged real estate agent scam artist to sell quality science in a famously unregulated low science market. Dietitian Christy Harrison says, "It's a slippery slope. You feel bad about yourself, you want to self-optimize, and you think that you can do that through this wellness phenomena, like Athletic Greens or Soylent or intermittent fasting." Or as Ellie Austin puts it, more than any particular formula or outcome, AG1 is selling hope. The hope of an easy route to long-term health. The hope that one could look like a celebrity. The hope of a successful, beautiful life. Isn't that the entirety of Huberman's podcast? For that matter, isn't that behind much of the binaural beat phenomenon? I successfully managed to pull us back to the original topic because I'm just so good at this. 5. What's the harm? One thing you'll run across anytime you read criticism of Dr. Huberman and his podcast is his detractors will make sure to say there are some good things here. The basics of eating, sleeping, and exercising aren't sexy, really, but they are good for you. For a lot of people, the basics of self-help content, which, let's be honest, is what Huberman Lab is, a self-help podcast, the basics are helpful. They work. They get you to treat yourself and your body and your mind in healthier and kinder ways. I think a lot of us, though we may not admit it or be conscious of it, that we may find a little bit of shame towards it, are designed towards submission. Huberman and other wellness gurus represent an archetype. They are the parent. Daddy Huberman is meant to sexualize the man, but it can also describe many of his listeners' relationship to him. He is a father figure guiding them to do the things they already know they should. Isn't it easier to take care of yourself when someone else is telling you to? Don't we all want to be taken care of? At the end of the day, don't we want to return to the womb? Okay, sorry, I won't dive into my version of Lacanian bullshit here. It's an annoying topic to talk about and read about, so I'll spare you for now, I guess. Back to the real question. What's the harm in all this? In part, sometimes you convince people of lies and bad science, as with Huberman and many binaural beat producers. Worse than that, you steer them away from actual science and healthcare. You build up a distrust in systems instead of working to fix the deficiencies of systems. You say things like, this frequency was used to make super soldiers. You imply fluoridated water is dangerous and should be avoided. Populism rises. People express anger more and trust less. We focus on self-improvement to the point of obsession and isolation. In the extreme, it is another crack in the wall, risking a flood. A lot of this is magical thinking. We want things to be easier. It's so hard to be alive, isn't it? We want to be in control, or rather we want to surrender control to someone else, someone smarter, stronger, more confident, more successful, who can just put us on the right path. There are legitimate problems with our healthcare industry in the States, and certainly in every other country. There are mysteries to science that will remain unknown in our lifetimes. There is a dread that sits in all of us. We are incapable of true satiation except in death, and death is so fucking scary. In the ContraPoints video Conspiracy, she talks about how a lot of people engaged in conspiracism are desperately looking for an answer to everything. They are obsessed with meaning and assume it must be in everything. This is very similar to self-care maximalization spaces where there are correct choices, all within our control, that can explain everything. Sometimes we try to explain it all with strict biology and materialism because in a way that's less scary. It provides a sort of existential dread about determinism and fate, sure, but in a way that's easier to handle than the true existential crisis of acknowledging an absurd universe, one where bad things happen often for no reason, where suffering is simply suffering. It's bad, but it can hurt a lot to realize there is no metaphysical, cosmic reason for your pain, that it doesn't have inherent meaning, only given meaning. We have both too little and too much control over our lives. It would be wonderful if there were magic cures. Maybe there will be one day. But these, the supplements, the frequencies, the binaural beats, they're just scams. The problem with them, the harm, is that they take advantage of people's pain. After my first breakup, I was emotionally devastated for a long time. TikTok inundated me with tarot videos about how he was thinking of me, how he was coming back, how we're soulmates. And yeah, it gave me hope. And yes, the hope was nicer than the pain, but tarot isn't real. And if it were real, mass tarot readings over short-form video apps certainly wouldn't be. Every single one of those creators would direct you to their website where you could book appointments and readings and pay them to tell you the things you want to hear about your pain. They'll make money, but will you heal? Yeah, you will heal, but not because of unscientific grifters trying to take your money, but because you are you. You'll be okay because you will put in the work to make yourself okay. It won't be because you're taking ice baths or going on soundscape drug trips. It won't be because you're taking supplement gloop water or avoiding fluoride. It won't be because of conspiracy theories or any frequencies you play on YouTube. It'll be because you've got this, and other people will have you. But these grifters and liars and pseudoscientists are not the ones who will save you. It's not in their financial interest to do so. Howdy, and thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share if you're feeling saucy. You can join me over on Patreon if you would like, wherein you'll get these videos and others early. You'll also get to have some fun behind the scenes access to some of my art projects, some more personal vlogging style content, and you'll just get to support me and we'll get to chat about art a whole bunch, which is what I love to do most. You can go over to Amazon Smashwords or wherever you get your ebooks and purchase a copy of my poetry collections, Butterfly Snuff, and A Museum of Art and Eggs, both of which are also available in paperback and hardback. I have a second channel where I'm just reading through a bunch of public domain stuff for the fun of it and through my own work, so you'll get readings of these poetry collections and some short stories and some longer form fiction when I get around to it, and some plays. And I have a third channel where I'm uploading my music and art instead of having it all clog up this channel. So go support those if you feel like it. That content, a lot of it will also be getting uploaded early to Patreon. So if you want all of my stuff in one convenient space, Patreon is the place to go, which would be really cool of you, you know? I hope you have a fantastic day. Do not be rude in the comments. Do not go and harass anybody. And I will see you next time.